Hi there and welcome to Eat Clean 23. Would you be interested in finding more about a supplement that decreases the risk of heart disease, diabetes, and certain cancers? Do you want to know more about a supplement that reduces inflammation in the body and therefore reduces the pain associated with inflammatory diseases such as arthritis, rheumatoid arthritis, chronic fatigue, etc.? Do you want to know more about a supplement that shows promise in increasing lean body mass while at the same time decreasing fat mass? In addition, this supplement has been shown to improve mood while decreasing symptoms of depression. What I'm talking about are omega-3s, and in some cases specifically fish oil, but definitely omega-3s in general have been shown to cause all of these wonderful benefits. In addition, it's been shown that increasing your omega-3s can increase insulin sensitivity. It improves cognitive development. It positively affects the cognitive and visual development of infants, both pre and post-delivery. It reduces the incidence of postpartum depression in pregnant women, and it's also showing promise in the treatment of ADHD and ADD. I've probably got your attention now, and you're probably wanting to know more about omega-3s. So today's post is actually going to be broken into two parts. So I'm going to post one post today, and then in another week or two I'll post part 2. The quick and easy take home from my next 2 posts is the following. In order to reap all the benefits that I just described, basically you need to find a manageable way within your lifestyle to increase your omega-3 intake and absorption. At the same time, you need to find ways to decrease your omega-6 intake and absorption. And we'll talk a little bit more about future posts, why that ratio is so important. The easiest way to increase your omega-3 status is to start by supplementing with either fish oil or algae oil. All the wonderful things that omega-3s can do. You're ready to jump out and buy some fish oil or algae oil supplements. That's fantastic. However, the one caveat, make sure if you are taking blood thinners, you have heart rhythm disturbances, you've got surgery scheduled in the immediate future, or you have any type of bleeding disorder, make sure you do talk with your doctor before you consider supplementing with omega-3s. For majority of the remainder of the population, omega-3 supplementation is totally safe. The odd disturbances that you may get for some people if you choose a lower quality omega-3 fish oil supplement, you may end up with what we call fish burps, so that's not super pleasant, but there are definitely better supplements out there that don't cause that. And then for other very rare instances, some people do have indigestion following taking fish oil supplements. So just watch out for that, but that shouldn't be your case. If that does happen, what you want to do is just slowly decrease the dosage to a point where you can tolerate, or definitely try separating it throughout the day so your digestive system is easier to handle it. But again, given the wonderful benefits that omega-3s afford you, it's probably worth definitely giving it a go. Categories, and you want to find more about omega-3 supplementation, continue listening, and we're going to talk about how to decrease your omega-6 status. Okay, so like I said, it turns out that all those awesome benefits of omega-3s are negated, or at least severely minimized, if your omega-6 intake is too high. Basically, it's estimated that when we were eating in a more hunter-gatherer situation, our ratio of omega-6 to omega-3s was about 1-to-1, which is ideal or most favorable. Now, in today's current lifestyle and all the packaged foods we eat, it's closer to about 20-to-1 or 16-to-1. So that's omega-6 versus omega-3. And again, the reason why that's so important is because omega-3s and omega-6 fats basically compete with each other for space in the cell membranes and for the attention of enzymes. And therefore the ratio of fat, omega-6 versus omega-3, matters more than your absolute intake of either fat. So what's very important is even if you are going to increase your omega-3, which is great, you can't do that without also paying attention to your omega-6s. Otherwise, you're probably just wasting your money and effort. So I'm going to give you some really, really practical advice as to how you can decrease your omega-6s. So it does turn out that a lot of packaged foods contain omega-6s. And where omega-6s come from, they come from a variety of different fats and oils. And some things, for example, like walnuts, have some omega-6s and omega-3s, but the ratio isn't that terrible that you shouldn't include them. However, there are some oils where the ratio is just so skewed, it makes sense to eliminate them as much as possible from your diet. So the culprits that we want to avoid as much as possible are sunflower oil, cottonseed oil, soybean oil, and sesame oil. So I actually, when I was researching for this post, learned quite a bit and have realized that some of my favorite recipes that I don't use a lot of the time, but I do use some of the time, do use things such as sesame oil. So what I'm going to do for those recipes where I am using those oils is I'm going to try substituting a different oil, see if I can do that without negatively affecting the recipe, or I'm just going to enjoy those very, very sporadically and as a treat and not make that a regular routine. Okay, but I talked about practical solutions. So, of course, in majority of our packaged foods, that's where you're going to find those oils that I listed. So again, sunflower, cottonseed, soybean, and sesame oil. Those are typically the cheapest oil, therefore that's what manufacturers are going to use when they create their items. So what I'm going to encourage you to do, which is what I did, is I rated my cupboard of all the packaged foods that we eat, and I took a look at the labels to find out which ones actually include any one of those oils. If they do, you could do one of two things. If your memory is good, just remember that and minimize intake as much as possible, or put a sticky note on them to remind yourself to avoid those as much as possible. So let's take an example of what I had in my cupboard. So things like lentils, black beans, brown rice. Again, yes, these are packaged, they're still relatively whole food. No surprise, the more whole, not yet buddy, the more whole things are, they don't have those 4 oils. So these are still safe things to consume. I wasn't sure. Let's say something like this that's a little bit more processed. So this is a rice vegetable pasta. So this was okay. Did I know in advance? No, but basically I did my research and found that this is still... so here's some interesting ones. Salsa, here's one, Newman's Own salsa, and then Newman's Old pasta sauce. So these are things that I will use somewhat frequently in my cooking. Interestingly, this did not have any of those oils, so I'm still going to be free to use this, whereas this did have, let's see, which one was it, soybean oil. So I'm going to try to either look for a pasta sauce that uses olive oil instead, or I'm just going to minimize the amount at which I'm using that in my recipes. No surprise necessarily with some of these other items that are culprits and do have one of those oils. Goldfish, a kid's favorite. I do this very rarely for Jake. He does love them, but now I'm even less inclined to do so. So it's going to be an even rarer treat, much to his chagrin. Other things that I like to consider somewhat healthy, not awesome, but I consider them somewhat decent. These guys had sunflower oil in it, and wraps. Those had canola oil in it. One of my favorite soups. Again, we don't use this all the time, but we do, say, once every 2 weeks in the winter. This had canola oil in it. So again, am I never going to use those? No, but basically I'm going to red flag them in my mind. And what I'm going to challenge you to do, and I've written this in the post, is that for the next week, what I want you to do is any packaged food that you consume, I want you to take a look at to see if it contains one of those 4 oils. And your goal is to work towards having either 0 to 1 item a day that has those 4 oils. Another big culprit, by the way, are salad dressings. So even with some of my clients, Even with some of my clients, I've recommended these two dressings, Lighthouse and Bolthouse Farms. From a nutritional perspective, from any other stance, they're actually very good. But both of them do have the dreaded, which oils are they? Canola oil in this one. And this one has soybean oil. So, for a while, I was getting very good, and I was making my own salad dressings 90% of the time. And I got a little bit lazy, and I fell into maybe only making my own salad dressings about 20% of the time. This gives me motivation to up that. Remember, nutrition is a process. You can't expect to be perfect, but you can expect to move towards the right direction. So that's challenge number 1. Go into your cupboards, look at all the packaged foods you eat on a given day. Take a look at how many of them contain one of those 4 oils, and try to minimize. Your ultimate goal is to have 0 to 1 of those processed foods maximum a day to keep your omega-6, omega-3 ratio in check as much as possible. The other issue for omega-6 oils, of course, unfortunately, is eating out. Restaurants will use the cheapest oils possible, so of course it's going to be one of those 4. So if you're serious about decreasing your omega-6 intake, then what I would recommend is you put limits on the number of times you eat out, aiming for 1 time a week eating out for your max. Okay, so we'll get more into this next post, but some of the things you can think about, you want to start to assess how much supplementation is actually right for you. So when we talk next week about your ideal dosage, it's really going to depend on how many omega-3 whole foods you currently add into your diet. The other half of the equation to help you decide how much, if any, extra supplementation you need from omega-3 fish oil supplements or algae oil supplements is how many whole food sources of omega-3 you currently have in your diet. So some of the things, again, take a look at my actual post, and I'll have this all written down in nice notes for you, but some of the things that you could take a look at, like I was mentioning, and I'll explain further in post number 2, when it comes to omega-3s, the best absorbability of omega-3s, and I'll get into the science later, is from marine sources. So here are some examples that I had in my cupboards. So we've got some frozen wild pink salmon. We've got some salmon jerky. I've got some wild salmon lox. I've got some albacore tuna, and I've got some crab legs here. So all of these things are just examples of marine sources of omega-3. So check out my list on my post to find out some other ones. And you want to assess how many times a week you're having marine sources. In addition, you can check out how many times a day you're having plant-based sources. So marine-based sources you probably don't want to have every single day, because there is the concern with additional toxins that come from our seafood supply. But 2 to 3 days is a good goal, and would also really help your omega-3 status favorably. Then the other whole food source that you can get omega-3s from are plant-based sources. And in post number 2, I will talk a little bit about why, unfortunately, plant-based sources of omega-3s aren't quite as readily used as your body. Having said that, it's still great to keep in your diet. There's really what you also want to do to help you decide how much extra supplementation with, say, a fish oil you'd want, is to assess how many daily servings of vegetable-based omega-3s you're taking. There's not the same type of risk of ingesting toxins with plant-based sources of omega-3, so that's one benefit over the marine sources. But here's some examples of things where you can find plant-based sources of omegas. So we've got chia seeds here. What this is a Omega Essentials all-in-one shake, really good, which I'll talk about in a future post. But this has 2 grams of omega-3s from plant oils. These are sunflower seeds, pumpkin seeds. So pumpkin seeds are another good source of omega-3s. We've got some salba here. Hemp seeds, which I don't have, are another great source. And these are what I have left of my flax seeds. So any of those things would be considered plant-based sources of omega-3s. There are other ones that I will put on my post. So I also want you to track how many daily servings of those things that you have. This week is to count how many servings of marine-based sources of omega-3s you have and how many daily servings of plant-based sources of omega-3s. With that number, next week I'll help you decide then how much extra supplementation you need or should consider, if you need to consider any at all. So thank you so much. Look forward to seeing you for post number 2 about the wonderful benefits of omega-3s.